Abolitionist movement. Introduction. Abolitionist movement, reform movement during the 18th and 19th centuries, often called the anti-slavery movement. It sought to end the enslavement of Africans and people of African descent in Europe, the Americas, and Africa itself. See slavery in Africa. It also aimed to end the Atlantic slave trade carried out in the Atlantic Ocean between Africa, Europe, and the Americas. The historical roots of abolitionism lay in black resistance to slavery. Such resistance began during the 15th century as Africans enslaved by Europeans often sought to kill their captors or themselves. By the late 1700s, Christian morality, new ideas about liberty and human rights that came about as a result of the American and French revolutions and economic changes led to an effort among blacks and whites to end human bondage. Those who employed slave labor in the Americas resisted abolitionist efforts. First, slaveholders believed that their economic prosperity demanded the continuation of slavery. In order to work the large plantation in the Americas, huge amounts of labor were required. African slaves were cheaper and more readily available than white indentured laborers from Europe. And because they already had some immunity to European diseases, Africans were less likely to die from those diseases than were Native Americans. Second, employers of slave labor feared for their own safety if the slaves were freed. Due to the large number of slaves brought to the Americas, several regions had slave majorities. Slave owners worried that if slaves were suddenly freed, they might take over or exact revenge on their former masters. Although abolitionism existed in Europe and in the American colonies of several European nations, the struggle between anti-slavery and pro-slavery forces was most protracted, bitter, and bloody in the United States. As a result of the abolitionist movement, the institution of slavery ceased to exist in Europe and the Americas by 1888. Although it was not completely legally abolished in Africa until the first quarter of the 20th century, while the abolitionist movement's greatest achievement was certainly the liberation of millions of black people from servitude, it also reflected the triumph of modern ideas of freedom and human rights over older social forms based on privileged elites and social stratification.